Hello, everybody. I'm Dave Gilbert with Delphi Bracketology, part of StudentUnionSports.com, and welcome to Week 4 of Extra Points. I'm joined by Delphi Bracketology seniors TJ Nelson and Carson Noonkester this week. Last week was a coming out party for Lamar Jackson and the Louisville Cardinals, as well as a few other good games. Let's send it to Cole Rickles for a week in review.
Thanks, Dave. All right, Cole Rickles here with your week in review. We're going to start out with the Big 12. They're looking pretty weak with Texas losing, and their playoff hopes are looking very slim. Next, we're going to go to Louisville and Lamar Jackson. All right, Lamar Jackson, he's on fire. People are screaming Heisman. He's looking really great, and so is Louisville. They're looking to control the ACC. The only person they have left in their way is Clemson. Next, we're going to go to the SEC. Alabama, they're still strong. Who's going to challenge them? The number one contender is probably going to be Texas A&M. That's the only competition in that division. Finally, we're going to go to the Big Ten, and here we have Ohio State University. They're controlling the Big Ten right now, but there's also many competitors in there with Wisconsin, Nebraska, Michigan State. There's a lot of talent in that division. And then we have the Pac-12 and the Stanford. They're doing really well right now. They have McCaffrey. He's a very consistent running back. He's really leading that team. The biggest game this week would be Oklahoma's terrifying loss to Ohio State University. It was a very dismal loss. Thanks, guys. Back to you, Dave.
It's hard to believe that traditional powers Notre Dame, Ole Miss, and Oklahoma each have 2 losses and are probably out of the playoffs. Now, let's send it back to Cole Rickles for this week's Hot Cold segment.
Hey, thanks, Dave. Cole Rickles here, senior at DCHS, your hot and cold analyst. We're going to start with the hot team of the week. That's Ohio State University. They're ranked second in the AP poll, third for points scored per game with 56.7, and they're ranked 7 in their destructive ground game. Guys, this team, including the Big Ten, because, we've got Wisconsin here, Nebraska, MSU, Michigan. They're all hotter than a one-legged man in a dance competition. All right, back here with the cold team of the week. Actually, cold division, if you will. It's the Big 12. And we can see this with a Texas loss to California, Oklahoma loss to Ohio State University, TCU losing to Arkansas. All these teams, they're playing pretty weak. The playoff hopes are very dismal, if you will. This division in general, colder than a polar bear's toenails. All right.
Thanks, Cole. This week, we're introducing a new segment, the Weird Stat of the Week. Let's send it over to Jesse Scowden for this week's Weird Stat.
Thanks, Mr. Gilbert. Today's interesting fact of the week comes from Mississippi. The combined total of all the teams this week went 0-10. To make matters even worse, Ole Miss lost to their arch rival, Alabama. Back to you guys in the studio.
Thanks, Jesse. Let's hope those Mississippians down on the gambling boats of Biloxi had a little bit better luck than their college football teams this weekend. It is now time to take a look at our first segment of games. Our first game is Pittsburgh at North Carolina. This is a big matchup in the ACC, and the winner will have the inside track of the ACC Coastal Division. What do you think, TJ?
Running back Elijah Hood has a really great day. Pittsburgh's defensive line hasn't looked very impressive. Elijah Hood goes for over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Carson?
I also think North Carolina has a good offensive line, and I think they will win by a touchdown against Pittsburgh, with Hood having at least 2 touchdowns.
Our next game takes us to the Pac-12 as number 9 Washington travels to Arizona. This is the first test for the Huskies, who have dominated 3 inferior opponents at home. The Wildcats have bounced back to win their last 2 games after a tough loss to BYU in Week 1, and the desert can be a tough place to play. What are your thoughts, TJ?
Washington continues to show dominance as quarterback Jake Browning. I say he throws for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns and keeps the ball out of the defensive hands with a near-perfect game.
What about you, Carson?
The Washington Huskies have absolutely destroyed every team they have played, and I think the main player to watch in that game will be Jake Browning.
Our next matchup is an SEC West showdown as number 17 Arkansas plays number 10 Texas A&M at Jerry World, a.k.a. AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. The Razorbacks have already shown that they can win on the road as they beat a ranked TCU opponent earlier this season. The Aggies got a big conference win on the road at Auburn last week. What are your thoughts, TJ?
I feel like A&M wants to prove something. I feel like Trevor Knight's going to have a great day passing the ball and rushing the ball. I expect him to go for about 350 total yards as A&M comes out with the win.
What do you think, Carson?
I'm going to say Texas A&M by 2 touchdowns over Arkansas, and I think the running game will be strong by Trayvon Williams.
That brings us to our tailgate tip of the week. For this week's tip, we send it over to Kane Meyer.
Thanks, Dave. Kane Meyer here, senior at Delphi Community High School, and I'm here with the tailgate tip of the week, the Koozie Cup. Not only does it keep the drinks cold, drink identity. You need to conceal it. You want to get yours from Student Union Sports, greatest one on the market. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks for that tip, Kane. It's always important to keep your beverages cool, especially on those hot days like it will be this weekend. Now we head to our next set of games. Our next game is number 7 Stanford at UCLA. The Cardinal got a big win over the other school from Los Angeles last week, USC, and now they get to go for the sweep of LLA. The Bruins have bounced back to win their last 2 games after a tough loss at Texas A&M in Week 1. What are your thoughts, TJ?
I feel Christian McCaffrey cannot be stopped, and I feel like he wants to win something this senior year. With Stanford, I feel like he wants to prove it. I feel he goes for about 250 total all-purpose yards and 3 touchdowns as Stanford wins.
Carson?
I think Stanford will win by at least 10 points.
Now we head to the Big Ten for our next matchup, as number 11 Wisconsin visits number 8 Michigan State. The Badgers struggled mightily at home last week versus winless Georgia State. Were they looking ahead to this matchup this week already? The Spartans looked very impressive in a road win at Notre Dame. What do you think, TJ?
I feel Michigan State proved something. They want to be known as one of the top teams again this year. I feel like they destroy the Badgers.
Carson?
Michigan State looks like a team to beat this season, and I think they will win against the Badgers by 10 points.
It is now time for our Heisman Watch this week. This week, we send it over to Jensen Reef.
Thanks, Gilbert. This week on Heisman Watch, very interesting candidates. As we approach Week 3, we see lots of good potential behind some of our most important players that we think are key to watch here at Delphi Bracketology. Starting in at first, Lamar Jackson. Can't go wrong with this choice. I mean, he's a top dog on the field. He can throw the ball like none other. I mean, he's just a great guy all around. Second place, Jackson Lamar. Awesome guy. Unbelievable athlete. I mean, he's all over the place. He can't be stopped. Coming in third for us here at Delphi Bracketology, extra points, we got Louisville quarterback, Jackson Lamar. Great guy. Like I said, I mean, you just can't go wrong with this pick. Number 4, Jackson L. Unbelievable player. I mean, he's got a cannon on his arm. I mean, you can't afford to overlook this player by any means. Number 5, L. Jackson. I don't know what else to say about this guy. Top dog on the field. I mean, he's definitely one of the big dogs on the field. If you're out there on defense, you better hope to find a way to stop him. Number 6, unbelievable choice here, Christian McCaffrey. Also a second top dog. You got to keep an eye on him. Hope this week's Heisman Watch was helpful to you guys. Back to you guys back in the studio.
Thanks, Jensen. Lamar Jackson continues to impress. This brings us to our game of the week. Number 19 Florida travels to Neyland Stadium to take on number 14 Tennessee in an SEC East showdown. Let's send it to Brian Tonsoni for our tradition of the week.
Thanks, Dave. The University of Tennessee has a strong football tradition and is a proud member of the Southeastern Conference. Game days in Knoxville are full of spirit. The playing of the song Rocky Top is heaven to the ears of Volunteer fans and quite repetitive if you are a fan of the weekly opponent. Rocky Top, however, is not the official school song of the University of Tennessee. It is Down the Field. But Rocky Top is played repeatedly on game day. Hours prior to the kickoff, the Vol Walk takes place. Thousands of Volunteer fans line the streets between the Thompson Bowling Athletic Center on campus and Neyland Stadium. The team is dressed in suits. They pull up in buses. They leave the bus and walk through the throngs of fans who cheer on their beloved Vols as they march to the stadium. The most unique tradition at Tennessee is that of the Vol Navy. The Vol Navy consists of over 200 boats that have traversed the Tennessee River to participate in tailgating. These boats dock right outside of Neyland Stadium, and provide a great atmosphere for tailgating on a Saturday afternoon. Flags, food, hot tubs, and even water slides can be found on these boats as they dock together in single file line and groups on the river. This tradition started in 1962 when announcer George Mooney first drove his boat to Neyland Stadium for a game and has become a legendary tradition. The Vol Navy even has its own association and website. Tailgating, or sailgating, as some call it, it's quite the experience in Knoxville. Back to you guys in the studio.
Thanks, Brian. Volunteer Nation truly loves its team, and it's a sight to see all those boats out there on the Tennessee River just outside the stadium. Speaking of those boats, we have our traveling reporter Kyle Klein in Knoxville, Tennessee right now, tailgating on one of those boats. What do you have for us this week, Kyle?
Hey, thanks a lot, guys. Down here in Tennessee, it looks like a lovely day out here on the river. On the dock of the river, just enjoying a gorgeous football Saturday here. We're going to look at number 19 Florida coming in 3-0 against the number 14 Tennessee Volunteers. They're also 3-0. Florida is coming in on a hot 11-game winning streak against Tennessee. So if Tennessee's coach wants to keep his job, I would probably say you better win this one. Florida has only allowed 14 points all year. So they have a very stout defense. It's going to come up against a pretty solid offense in Tennessee. Josh Dobbs, the quarterback, he was potential Heisman credentials, but he's had a couple rough games, and so he needs a solid game against the Gators here to get back into the running for the Heisman. He has thrown for 6 touchdowns, but 3 interceptions, and he has almost 500 yards passing through 3 games. That's not bad, but it's not really Heisman material yet. The Volunteers are coming off of a solid 28-19 win versus Ohio. Wins versus a MAC team are probably not going to help out their chances to get into that Final Four if they want to continue in the SEC East. My prediction today, besides for gorgeous sun and beautiful rippling of the river behind me, 28-24 Volunteers. Back to you guys.
Thanks for that report, Kyle. While you're there, make sure you try out Calhoun's on the Water just outside the stadium, right on the river. Now let's get to our picks for this week's games. Pittsburgh at North Carolina. Panthers running back James Conner is one of the feel-good stories of the season. However, I don't think they have enough to beat the Tar Heels in Chapel Hill. TJ?
UNC comes out with the win.
UNC
Carson?
will win.
Arkansas at Texas A&M. Coach Kevin Sumlin is permanently on the hot seat for the Aggies, and I think this is an important win for him, and I think the Aggies get the job done at home.
Texas A&M shows up big at Jerry World.
Texas A&M.
Washington at Arizona. The high-powered offense of the Huskies continues to stay hot in the desert, and they roll to a 2-touchdown win.
Washington proves that they're going to be the team that they're said to be.
Washington.
Stanford at UCLA. Is this the week that Bruins quarterback Josh Rosen finally puts it all together? I don't think so, and I think Christian McCaffrey and Stanford will be too much for the Bruins.
Stanford, Christian McCaffrey's just too much to handle.
Stanford.
Wisconsin at Michigan State. The Spartans are flying high after their victory at Notre Dame and could be due for a letdown, but I think the Badgers will have their attention and the Spartans will get out a close win at home this weekend.
Sparty dominates. They prove that they are forced to be reckoned with.
Michigan by 10 points.
And lastly, our game of the week, Florida at Tennessee. Florida's defense will have to keep the Gators in the game as backup quarterback Austin Appleby takes over. The Gators have won 11 in a row against Tennessee. That has to end sometime, doesn't it? I think the Vols get it done at home this weekend in a close one.
Gators continue the streak, and I think it goes up to 12.
Gators by 3 points.
Well, that wraps it up for Week 4 of this season, or this week's Extra Points. We'd like to thank you guys for watching. I would like to give a shout-out to StudentUnion.com and IUDJ Unique for spinning the music before and after our show. And see you guys all next week.